Welcome back to our part 2 of describing network security technologies. Let's continue on from a stateful-based firewall to using your iOS router as a firewall in what has historically been known as a zone-based firewall or zone-based policy firewall. So zone or zone-based really is the operative phrase there, where what we do is we place specific interfaces into a zone, create multiple zones, and then define a policy that can control the direction and the traffic flow between those two different zones. And by the way, if you're in an environment that is heavily regulated by some kind of governmental standards, HIPAA, PCI, Visa, the list goes on, the concept of zones makes perfect sense to you. So just keep in mind here, it's going to be grouping interfaces in a zone and then placing a policy to control how the traffic will travel between those zones. Now, continuing on with where we are today with the list of attacks and the advanced nature of attacks and the proliferation of IP-based services, we're all so very connected. Having simple access lists, even having stateful inspection, going deeper and understanding the behavior of the application is simply not enough. You need a central repository. You need services and applications to be able to work together. You need, based upon your security appliance, feeding to this central repository and pulling from the central repository to be able to dynamically update the policies so the policies are more relevant, more up to date. And again, folks, that's where security intelligence comes into play. Now, security intelligence is not only a fancy catchphrase, but it is also a specific service offered by Cisco's Talos Group or Talos Intelligence Group, as is mentioned here in the last bulleted item. So they protect networks that subscribe to this service by offering up-to-date security intelligence feeds. But let me pause for a moment. The idea here of feeds really does go in both directions. Your security appliances, so what they're showing us here is a cute icon of a Firepower appliance. And this screenshot on the left is a screenshot of Firepower Management Center, a centralized graphical interface for managing multiple different Firepower appliances. But my point is not that. My point is the Firepower Management Center can feed information from its various points of enforcement, its various Firepower appliances, to Cisco's Talos Group to seed the security intelligence. And by the way, the Firepower appliance is only one of many, many examples of hardware, physical, virtual, and software services that feed the Talos database. And then again, they can use that security information feed to, once again, enhance their policies. Maybe adding in a validity to an attack. Maybe adding in a context to the attack. Adding in more of a guarantee that, yes, that is a high probability for such an attack. All, once again, having your systems work together to look at things from a holistic perspective, not that one interface on that one packet at that one moment. So again, providing security intelligence. Now that we acknowledge the importance of security intelligence, it's time for us to move to the next step, which is to start with our standardization. Standardization so multiple vendors may be able to communicate, so multiple systems within an organization, maybe between vendors or even within a single vendor, may be able to communicate and all around provide a better security posture. So if you ask me, there are two things that become very important here when we start talking about standardization. The first is going to be the ability to identify, provide a way to express security threats and their details. And folks, that's where STIX comes into play, or structured threat information expression. So the X really is the capitalization of the second letter in the word expression. So once again, that provides an industry standard mechanism by way multiple vendors and their products can define security threats. And now that we have a standardized way of defining them, we need a standardized way of being able to communicate, to transport them. And that's where, you guessed it, TAXII comes into play. So TAXII, again, is going to be a trusted, automated exchange of indicator information. You know how our industry is. They like their multi-letter, their 3-4-letter acronyms. But the bottom line is automated exchange. Again, the X being the second letter in the word exchange. A standard transport mechanism for sharing this information, this threat intelligence. Now that we have, once again, a standard way of defining and then a standard way of transporting, now we need to start using this. And that's where, just one of many examples, your Cisco Firepower Management Center, acting as a threat intelligence director or a TID. And by the way, director, if you ask me, really is the word to use because it's able to, once again, use security intelligence. It's able to support the standard mechanism by which we automate the exchange and the standard mechanisms by which we define the attacks, once again using TAXII and STIX from the last conversation. But then it's able to take knowledge of your environment, of the sessions flowing through your firepower next generation firewalls, firepower next generation intrusion prevention appliances, and correlate. Identify, for example, is that a pre-NAT address? And what do you know? There it is. That is the post-NAT address. So that packet right there is for the same destination. These multiple different packets are for the same flow. And not only that, the Firepower Management Center having the ability to discover your environment and understand if this flow is destined for this address. And what do you know? This address has this operating system and this application running on it, and they are actually susceptible to this style of an attack. So all around, you're able to get better contextual information, richer reports, and refine your security policies and your security responses because of this security intelligence and standard definitions and standard intercommunication. Continuing our overview with our network-based malware protection, where I like more focusing on malware protection, not so much network-based. And the simple reason is we can have endpoint-based software agent loaded on the laptop or desktop or server, and then also have network malware filtering on a choke point, a security appliance, for example, a Cisco Firepower next generation firewall. So understand that, in my opinion, a better conversation is malware protection, and then understanding, for example, with AMP for endpoints, we can do endpoint malware inspection and protection, and then AMP for networks, AMP, by the way, being Cisco AMP, a Cisco offering within inside of their Cisco portfolio of security products, but we can do, again, AMP on the endpoint and AMP on the network. And then we can even take that one step further. The information that is gathered about malware can be shared with AMP in the cloud, literally what's called AMP Cloud. And you can even have your files, really the digest of a file, inspected with the AMP Cloud service. So offerings, options of either on-premise malware protection and in the cloud or cloud-based malware protection. Moving forward to intrusion prevention, I want to be very clear here. IPS, IDS, intrusion prevention, intrusion detection can both happen on the same security appliance. It really is just a matter of your method of deployment. For example, intrusion detection would be more offline, out of band, getting a copy of the data in promiscuous mode, while intrusion prevention is going to be inline. The data must go through the security appliance. And then in addition to that, just as we have two different modes available to our sensors, we also can have a dedicated sensor, physical or virtual, for performing the intrusion detection, intrusion prevention options. Or we can have the IPS, IDS, let's focus here on IPS, intrusion prevention services, added as part of the other services in your next generation firewall. But bottom line is, what intrusion prevention does is it has the ability, based upon policies, based upon predefined signatures, to identify anomalous behavior within inside of an application or a session. It gives us, the administrators, the ability to create rules or modify existing rules so we can better cater, customize how traffic is treated passing through our interfaces. And then once again, the ability to share with Cisco's security intelligence services to build greater intelligence, but then also use the intelligence already gathered with reputation-based attacks. And then getting into our next generation firewall. In my opinion, folks, next generation really is the key word. Let me pause for a second. This would be, for example, a Cisco ASA with the Firepower threat defense operating system on it, or a Firepower appliance with the Firepower threat defense operating system on it. But bottom line is, for me, what I think of as next generation is the ability to go deeper into the protocol, deeper into the application behavior, and then also provide multiple different services, as we mentioned a moment ago. Intrusion prevention, in addition to our bulk access control list, in addition to application and protocol intelligence, our ability to even process plain text as well as encrypted traffic, supporting multiple different services. Again, in addition to security services, NATing, VPNing, as well as sharing with cloud services to once again add to security intelligence and leverage security intelligence.